Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining me. And yes, my name's Stephanie Bretherton. And as Zelda said, I will be reading from Bone Lines, which is my debut novel. Bone Lines is a dual narrative set 74,000 years ago and in the present day. And it's an attempt to explore our human journey and what makes us who we are, both as individuals and as a species. But before I get to that, I just want to share something. Recently, I was privileged to hear a talk online by the mythologist Michael Mead. And he made some very interesting points about our current situation and how it might compare to the classical mythical journey of initiation. In that, when the hero goes on his traditional journey, he or she goes through three basic phases. The first being separation. Well, a lot of us are feeling pretty separated right now. The second being the ordeal. And while it varies, some far worse than others, we're all going through something at the moment. And then finally, sort of the transformation and the return to the community, having perhaps learned something or being re-energized or bringing something new. And I thought that was all quite interesting considering what we're going through. But he made another point that the classical hero of the great tales is usually the leader, a warrior, a king. But in our current story, the heroes are the healers. And that had particular resonance for me because the characters I tend to write about tend to be healers and shamans and doctors and scientists. So that had a strong and powerful resonance for me. And the narrative that I'm going to read from is the prehistoric narrative in which a young shaman or a proto-shaman is on a solo quest of initiation, basically a very hazardous journey, escaping from a natural disaster towards some sense of sanctuary, but also a sense of something new. And so the reading I've chosen is really, it's just hopefully a little bit of a snapshot of that journey. The small mounds ahead seem unnatural to these surroundings, to this flat, featureless land. As she comes closer, invisible fingers rake the back of her neck and she hesitates to approach. But there is no living movement and she is compelled to explore. The first curled cadaver, by now almost fully drawn back to the earth, stops her still. This one died how? Of hurt or hunger? There is another nearby, face down, reaching out, as though collapsed in crawling. She sees no more corpses, only this handful of mounds, decorated with pebbles, horns, twists of twig, and what once had been some kind of plant. Further investigation finds tracks leading from this place, walking, not running, two-footed. A pair of men, not so much bigger than her. Survivors of this group, or the ones who had given out the dying. Then she sees that they had been dragging something small and struggling, but also two-legged. Her heart sounds an angry alarm, and her eyes graze the horizon all around. When she is sure they are not still near, she looks again at those left above the ground. One, and perhaps his mate. And now she understands that these were not her kind. These were the others. Different. So strong, and yet as weak as any in these times. They hunted well, by crowding, thrusting, and stabbing, but they threw no spears, nor slingshots. They had no bows, although she had heard of no others outside of her own tribe that did. But they were powerful, and never to be underestimated. She had never seen the others before, only heard tales of them. But now there is a mysterious bond that she is unable to rip away. It is a waste of energy that she should not spend, but she sets about finishing the work of the burial. The pair left above ground had somehow lived through, or come back to find, whatever had happened here, lasting long enough to honour those who had fallen. She covers their remains, if only shallowly, shares some of the death gifts from the other mounds, if only a scattering. But these fellows too deserve to follow their kin. As she works, she hears her grandmother's voice, the chance that the old woman would offer for one lost. There were certain sounds for those who died of sickness, and other more powerful and deeper laments for those taken suddenly or too young. More for those who had died in the hunt, or who had been taken by the anger of men. She cannot know what sounds these souls may have made to each other, or for each other, but she thinks her grandmother would not scold her for lending them one of her own people's songs. There is no other to hear it, only the small and calling creatures of the sand. And as she sings and works, she understands, suddenly. The distance between all that exists is nothing. The tiny grains of dust that claim us all had birthed us all. In each that lives and loves there is the same, and everything is better for it. And in this she finds a quiet yet immeasurable peace. Now she understands the look in her grandmother's eyes as she was dying. She finishes her work, but then awakens from the sacred and is aware once more of momentary fears. Striding on into the cover of the coming night, she knows that she must change direction yet again and walk far away from those terrifying footprints. Thank you. And as a reminder, my book Bone Lines is available wherever you like to find your books. Thank you so much, Zelda, for having me.